Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the India-Japan Dialogue with Praveen Dogra. This is our first episode in the new year 2023 and I would like to take this opportunity to wish all my viewers a very happy new year. I'm very excited to introduce my guest today. One of them has been a student of mine and I have seen her personally grow tremendously in the field of India-Japan relations. She is the recipient of the Japan Foundation Fellowship from the University of Tokyo and it's an absolute pleasure to have her on my show today. Joining her is a very senior and distinguished professor from the Jawaharlal Nehru University, or as we commonly know, JNU. She is with the Center of the East Asian Studies situated at the School of International Studies in JNU and has more than 3 decades of experience in studying the India-Japan relations. They both, along with their colleague, Dr. Shahana, who is also a graduate from JNU and right now working at the University of Navarra in Spain, published a book, India-Japan Relations at 70, Building Beyond the Bilateral, in March 2022. So without further ado, let me introduce my guests today, Professor Chaudhary and Dr. Parul Bakshi. It's a pleasure to have you on my show and please accept my heartiest congratulations at the launch of your book.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us over.
Let me start by asking you, how did you start ideating and conceptualizing about this book? And what intrigued me was the title of the book, Building Beyond the Bilateral, and how did that come about?
Let me begin by telling you a little about the backstage drama that happened. It started in October 2021 when my student Parul reached out to me and said that 2022 is the 70 years of India-Japan relations and we need to do something from the center. Obviously, a conference is something that students look forward to, but we realized with the pandemic, it was not possible to go offline. So what resulted in is a book. This book has been a promotion of my own students because each writer out here are students of mine, either having passed out like Dr. Shahana or were currently my students who were edging towards finishing their PhD, and today I'm very proud to say Parul has become Dr. Parul Bakshi. About how the title originated, I think I should leave it to Parul to give you people a good understanding.
So I think the story behind how we came to finalizing the title is a process in itself, because I think one of the things we put a concerted effort upon was the fact that there have been enough publications on India-Japan relations. And taking those as an inspiration, we wanted to make sure that what we were publishing was something which brought newer aspects towards the relationship as well. So keeping that thought behind, we realized the fact that the bilateral relationship has already been built over the course of the 70 years that we were commemorating and celebrating. So I think building beyond the bilateral then encompasses the ideology and the perspective behind the thinking that now is the time to build beyond what has already been set forth in the past 7 decades. So I think we went quite back and forth in finalizing the title, and till the time all 3 editors of the book, Ma'am, me and Shahana, were happy with, I think, what we thought reflects the intention behind this book.
Absolutely. I mean, my personal take, what you've said, very correct, because last 70 years, what we've built is good enough, but what next after the 70 years? So I think this book really focuses on what is beyond, the centenary relationship between India and Japan and going beyond the bilateral. So congratulations again on the launch of this book.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Professor Chaudhary, let me start by you. The part in your book is touching upon various important topics like Industry 4.0, climate change and outer space. Personally, Industry 4.0 is quite close to my heart because that is something which I do. There are 2 parts to this question. Firstly, I would like to know, how did you get connected to Japan initially? And second part of the question is about your take on the book on these 3 domains. What do you think needs to be done more, in all these 3 domains which you touched upon in the book to further fuel the India-Japan relations?
When did I start? Way back, probably, she definitely was probably not even born at that point of time. Japan was the Asian country that had scaled, become the 2nd largest economy in the world. And in India, there was a lot of, especially in the subject of economics, we went through a lot of courses which taught us about what was so different about Japan's economic miracle. And that is probably the major reason why I moved on to focus on Japan. And thereafter, as in my master's as well as in my MPhil PhD, we were allowed to specialize on a country, and Japan became my focus area. Since then, it has been essentially Japan economy, and I have had the pleasure, the pleasure of being part of teams which looked at comprehensive economic partnership agreement of Japan and India. So the build-up of knowing and understanding India-Japan relationship is being not only by reading but also experiencing the whole thing. In 1990s, India-Japan relations was limited to looking at Maruti and Suzuki's partnership in economics, and in sphere of culture, it was basically Buddhism as well as some amount of understanding of No from here and some amount of dance recitals that used to go to in Japan for performing. But today, I think we are much more entrenched. We have a large number of activities that goes around, right from food, culture to hardcore technological exchanges between academics as well as practitioners. Industrialization 4.0 is definitely the next step. And why is this relationship very important at this matter is two very important aspects. One is the legal and governance of the industrialization 4.0 technology. And second is this is probably the place where what United Nations and as well as USA's proclamation is that the like-minded nations should come together, because until and unless we come together, we would not be able to face the challenge that is being erupting in this world, especially with the kind of ideological fallout that has happened, especially after the Ukraine. So given this situation, I think it is very important in India-Japan relationship to team up. Where do we team up? There is plethora of technologies, critical technologies that will make a difference, which will move us out of the trajectory that we are at the presently undergoing, and therefore we would be looking at something very new. In this newness, the advantage that both these countries have is there are lots of comparative advantage between the two countries, which should be mapped correctly. In the manufacturing sector, which was what we had initially targeted as a major area of India-Japan cooperation, we've achieved something, but we've not been able to achieve the one that was expected. Whereas in this particular field, I think since it's all new, learning from the past experience, we should be able to do a better job of integrating each other's policies as well as ground level technological challenges and bring together forth something that would be beneficial for both the countries. One field where we are already seeing some impact is in this 5G and the 6G sector, where Indian companies have lined up with Japanese company and proved very successfully taken forward this whole digitalization of Japan as well as digitalization of India. With respect to blue economy, it's a very new area of operation. You have the Blue Dot network embedded into the blue economy, and we would be seeing a lot of maritime activities, both at security, economics, as well as cultural factors, which will embed itself to create a new kind of conceptualization. Outer space is the next territorial claims that all countries are making. And I think in this, India-Japan relationship would essentially look at Japan's technology, especially in robotics, which has been allowed to come forth with debris, etc., of space debris, whereas India, being a little laggard in that aspect, would probably be very look towards Japan for help to be able to scale their space program. We are doing excellently currently, so we should be able to scale it further. And I think especially with space and security, maritime security concerns, especially when we're looking at information data flow from outer space into the maritime structure, the Indo-Pacific becoming a place of contest, where free and open Indo-Pacific or free flow of goods and services is critical both for India and Japan. This is where we would harness the skill. So the critical technology, etc., will always be in such that it will border around both use of civilian and use of military, and I think this is where we will be really profiting by becoming, cooperating and enhancing our relationship up here.
I absolutely agree with you. I think you've categorized it quite well. things at the manufacturing sector. So that's really a people-to-people contact. And I think India can do a lot better if we get good technological transfer from Japan in terms of manufacturing, because Japan is also looking at other countries apart from the ones nearby to get to their manufacturing facilities. So I think that technological transfer from Japan to India will help India in robust manufacturing, and the blue economy is something which we don't hear about quite often. So I think that is something which you've touched upon, and is something which we look forward to. How does it play out? And outer space is something kind of a futuristic outlook which you have given. So I think you've categorized three portions really well. And I personally look forward how we can work together in all these three spheres. So
as I call it, the new frontiers.
Absolutely, and that's how I would say the building beyond the bilateral. So when we look at the blue economy and the outer space cooperation, these are the things which are working towards beyond the bilateral. So I guess I absolutely agree, and all the best both the countries in terms of cooperating in all these three spheres. My next question to you, Dr. Bakshi, or Parul, if I may call you that.
Yes, please.
So for my viewers, Parul and me go a long way back. I had the pleasure of teaching a Japanese language in 2016, and it's absolutely wonderful to have her on my show. Never thought that would happen, but again, welcome
Pleasure
to the
is
show.
all mine.
The part where you touched upon in the book is the cooperation in renewable energies,
Right.
with so much focus on the climate change issue, and it's actually started affecting various countries.
Right.
How do you see this cooperation in renewable energies between India and Japan playing out, and where are we exactly currently in that department?
So I think one of the reasons that we specifically chose to devote a chapter to the the topic of energy has a lot to do with what ma'am was previously mentioning. The fact that there are so many changes which are coming about at the international level, and energy and climate change becomes the two pertinent concerns, so to say, because it is very difficult to kind of remove energy sector from climate change. So when you are talking about energy, climate change becomes a crucial part of it. Also, the fact that you cannot talk about economy without talking about energy. So, we were talking about Industry 4.0, blue economy, and a lot of that aspect also has to do with the energy transition, the ongoing energy transition. I think a key role which is being played right now at the international level is by the Paris Agreement. So, I feel that Paris Agreement being a universally accepted, agreement towards which the goal of which all the countries are working towards setting their climate ambitions, was one of the prime reasons that I wanted to focus specifically on renewable energies and the transition towards renewable energies by both these countries. It is interesting, the fact that, the relationship towards this transition is already been there since about 2005. So while it might seem like a new aspect, a newer perspective towards the cooperation, it isn't so much so as, the new frontiers which ma'am looks at, in her chapter. So I think energy then becomes this bridge between something which has already been worked upon and which is still being worked upon, and would kind of lay the foundation for the future cooperation as well. So as I mentioned, under the Paris Agreement, both countries have their climate targets. A huge share of that is linked towards the energy sector. There is cooperation which is already happening. There are mini grid projects which are already been proposed. Some trial projects have already happened with success. That I have also touched upon, an area of cooperation which I feel is not probably spoken a lot about, which is the policy cooperation aspect within the energy sector. So energy data management is something which India has to look into, is looking into, as we expand, expand our understanding of the energy sector, as we look at newer areas such as resource adequacy, such as how to, bring about stability within the grid while looking at the intermittency of renewable energy. So a lot is happening, and that kind of lays the foundation to, bridge the gap which kind of exists within the energy dialogue between India and Japan. So as that foundation is there, I think it is easier to build upon, and that is something I think I tried to, for my chapter to reflect within the book.
But would it be fair to say, let's say we're talking about manufacturing companies, Industry 4.0, there are already a lot of Japanese manufacturing companies in India.
Yeah.
How is Japan and India, playing this cooperation in renewable energy on the ground? You said there are certain grids which have been made, I guess, in industrial towns in Neemrana. I think that is one of the examples. But there's still a long way to go.
Certainly.
We're just scratching the surface over here.
Certainly.
So what do you see needs to be done to sort of get to that potential?
So I think, within the chapter, if you look, you would see that I have divided the cooperation into three aspects, which is technical, financial, and policy. So technical and financial, I feel, are areas which you're, talking about, wherein there is already certain amount of work which has been done, but there are challenges, so to say, when it comes to expanding. Now, what those challenges are and how can we overcome becomes critical to, assessing as to the future, how the future trajectory of this relationship would evolve. I feel that there is already enough study going on by agencies like JICA, like JETRO. They're all involved with the Indian government. There are trainings which are happening, Indians going to Japan, getting trained. So I feel that is there. But another aspect which I link with the policy cooperation side is also looking at these newer areas which are coming about. Say, for example, green hydrogen. It is very interesting to note that in the chapter I did, mention about that, and India recently announced its national green hydrogen mission, and Japan has been, promoting green hydrogen quite a bit, with countries like Australia being a key partner. So I feel the direction is there. The momentum also is there and is being created more so. It's just about accelerating that further and seeing what are the specific areas where this deep bilateral relationship can be of benefit for both the countries. So, given the geographical expanse of India, given the fact that how many different types of renewable energies can be expanded upon within our country, I feel becomes a great benefit for this relationship, which should be and can be explored more.
So my next question is actually to the both of you, and this is regarding the role of universities in India and what are they sort of instrumental in promoting the India-Japan relations. Jawaharlal Nehru University, let me admit, has been one of those universities who has played a pivotal role in promoting India-Japan relations. And as a professor and as a former student of the universities, I'd love to hear your views as to what these universities, apart from yours, can do to bridge this gap between, let's say the people-to-people contact, the student-to-student contact between the two countries, and what further role they can play, going towards our relationship.
Yeah, one of the pillars of any relationship is the people-to-people's contact, and university comes in as a big medium through which this contact can increase, especially because you have a captured set of people, that is basically students who either learn the language or are in subjects where they pick up Japan as a country study. And that is where the universities can play a huge role in first attracting students to understand that Japan is a place of understanding, academically very sound country. It is comparable to any OECD countries, yet people do not look at Japan as an alternative for education. So this is one place that we can work on. Many MOUs have been signed. If JNU, for instance, has a large number of Japanese universities who have various levels of MOU with us. But somehow we've not been able to execute it more because of our academic challenge of the sessions being in different timing, etc. And therefore we've not often been able to fulfill the commitments that is required when you do an MOU. I think this is one place where nitty-gritty has to be placed. We have to ink out a good set of options of exchange programs, short-term, long-term, medium-term, as well as exchange between scholars within these universities. So it needs a kind of going back to the drawing board and seeking out areas where cooperations of this kind of exchange, which leads to, say, collectively writing books, collectively doing research, part research happening in Japan, part research happening here. that is, I think, where we would need to work out as far as building up a scholarly, engagement within these two countries. But at the student to student level, I think it can start right from the high school level when students can go for homestays, exchanges. I know European schools which have homestays, and I do know, have friends who have actually come to Japan at the age of 15, 16, felt so enthused about Japan that they went back to study the language, got into subjects where they could study Japan and become Japanese scholars. And that is exactly what we need in our country too. So start from creating interest in Japan. And believe me, the younger generations are quite attuned to Japan because of anime and gaming. So attracting them to Japan is not going to be a difficult proposition. But needs a constructive structuring in which we can engage them. It has happened with the US universities. I think Japan universities can think of summer programs of various kinds which would help or enthuse students to go there.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with what ma'am said. Just to kind of add to, from a student perspective, in the sense that I feel that, such exchange programs, even the fact that if there are different faculties or students visiting your university, you get to interact. For a lot of my peer group, during my post-graduation, I realized that, it was the first time they got a chance to interact with Japanese people, despite the fact that some of them were actually language students. They had been learning the language for about more than a year or so. So I feel those opportunities become, the breeding ground for more enhanced curiosity, the desire to be part of that country, be it academically, be it some of the students would want to just go and work for a Japanese company. And, with the economic expansion, the fact that there are more and more international companies also having offices in Japan, that creates a lot more opportunities. And also about the high school, at the high school level, I think a lot has already started to be done. There are such opportunities, but probably promoting those opportunities and for students to have a lot more awareness that such programs exist would really help, because I genuinely feel that the curiosity between Indians as well as Japanese about their, about each other's culture, about, the popular culture feeding into it already exists. So that is an area we don't need to worry about in the sense. So it's not like Indians don't know about Japan or Japanese people do not know about India. It is just about creating more opportunities and bridging that gap between, the two nationalities, and creating more opportunities for them to, be able to interact and exploring their respective interests, so to say.
Correct, I agree. So what basically we're trying to get a sense is that we need to work at the grassroots levels.
Right.
So once the grassroots levels are taken care of, going forward, people will look at Japan as a destination, and it goes vice versa. We need children in Japan also to look at India as a destination. So right now, probably that spread of information is not happening that much. Obviously, JNU has set the benchmark, I understand. But there's so much, else which needs to be done by, let's say, other universities, because it's a, sky's the limit when it comes to India and Japan. And the only way I feel we can improve this relationship is having by more people-to-people contact at various levels. Let me get to my next question. While this book really offers a vision for the future, I mean, our viewers would like to know what other important topics this book has touched upon. So you'd like to shed some light on that.
Sure. It has the civilizational history that India-Japan relationship has. It talks about soft power relationship between the two countries, and of course the current maritime security, the security strategic components. It looks into the economic partnership. It looks into the cyber security aspects. So there are others that has been there. And I think Parul will give you a larger content because she is the one who finally proofread the book.
No, I think the intention and the vision for the book was for it to be a go-to book for anybody. You don't have to be a scholar, you don't have to have a background on India, Japan. So, you can pick up this book and get an assessment and a vision of the past, the present, and the future of the 70 years of this bilateral relationship. So yeah, I think that's what.
So I think a lot of viewers probably would, use this book to try and understand how it all began and, how it is going to be for the next 30 to
Right.
40 years between India and Japan. So Professor Chaudhary and Dr. Bakshi, it was wonderful, learning your thoughts and views about the book and in general how India-Japan relations can really go to the next level. I would further like to know, as we have completed 70 years of the establishment of India-Japan diplomatic relations, and as we head towards the centenary of these bilateral relations, how do you see the future trajectory of these relations, and what would be your vision, and what can be done to achieve that between the two countries?
The next power play is going to be in the Indo-Pacific between China and USA, but the middle powers like India, Japan, will definitely come into the picture to create a like-minded community like what you see happening in Quad. And Quad, if it is going to take a position by itself, it would definitely be the place where India-Japan bilaterals will go beyond the bilaterals. And Quad would be the place where India-Japan would probably cooperate to create a free and open Indo-Pacific. And this is going to be critical for not only India, Japan and the Quad nations, but also the Southeast Asian countries who look towards economically progressing, because the current century is the Asian century. And here, two important countries, the second largest and the fifth largest economy, coming in together, cooperating in all the multifaceted dimensions that we've discussed today, would, I think, leverage this relationship to a newer heights. Further, I think, given the kind of situation that the world faces, these two countries will also play a huge role in creating a balance within this particular region and enable the littoral states to continue to progress. And if we can, attempt would always be there to carry everyone together rather than working out individually.
That is true, ma'am, because India, Japan have a long way to go, and going towards the centenary of our bilateral relations, I think, as I've said before, sky's the limit. So how about your take, and what is your vision of the India-Japan relation going forward?
So I think ma'am has already summarized, the vision really well. But if I were to just add two new perspectives to what ma'am mentioned, I would say one is the growing realization and acceptance of the fact that the challenges that we face now are at a global level. So each country not only has to play its own part, but that interdependency has become very clear. So that, I think, promotes both the countries to continue working together, not only bilaterally, but also at a multilateral level. And it is not restricted just to the energy sector, though I do feel that becomes one key pillar. But as ma'am mentioned, security, the international politics and the dynamics which are going on geopolitically also play a key role. So that is one aspect. And the second is, I think, something which we were talking about is the people-to-people exchange, which I feel remains one key aspect, which going forward beyond the 70 years of this relationship should be a key focus, because that enables us to already form relations which would prepare us to kind of face no matter whatever new challenges or whatever new aspects come into play in this bilateral relationship going ahead. So I think that's.
I agree, because of the current geopolitical situations, it's very difficult for countries to just work in silos. I think they need to collaborate, and not only bilaterally. I think what you said, multilaterally. Multilateralism is one key word which is being used these days. So thank you so much for sharing your views and thoughts today, Professor Chaudhary and Dr. Bakshi, or Parul. Again, I really feel different calling you Dr. Bakshi, so I'll stick to Parul.
Stick to Parul.
And I think what you have shared today is of real importance, because certain things I'm sure we did not know about, especially renewable energy, blue ocean and outer space. These are certain trajectories we haven't touched upon. So again, I really thank you for taking the time out and coming on the show today, and I really look forward to connecting you on different platforms as well. Thank you.
Pleasure was entirely ours. I think we had a good time.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you. So to all our viewers, thank you so much for watching today's episode, and see you all soon on the next episode of the India-Japan Dialogue with Praveen Dogra. Until then, take care and goodbye.